The red sun of Kepler 442c cast long shadows across the rocky landscape as Commander Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of Outpost Delta 7. The station hummed quietly with the sound of recycling units and power generators that never seemed to work quite right anymore. Jake stopped at the main window and looked out at the ancient ruins that dotted the horizon like broken teeth against the crimson sky. 6 months had passed since their communications array died in a solar storm, and Jake knew his crew was getting restless. 12 people stuck on a dead rock at the edge of known space with no word from Earth was enough to drive anyone crazy. But they had a job to do, and Jake intended to see it through. Chief Engineer Lisa Grant was bent over a control panel in the power room when Jake found her. Her blonde hair was tied back with a piece of wire, and her jumpsuit was covered in grease stains. She looked up as he approached and wiped her hands on a dirty rag. "Any luck with the comm array?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer from the look on her face. Lisa shook her head and pointed at the tangled mess of cables and circuit boards spread across her workbench. "The quantum relay is completely fried and we don't have the parts to fix it properly. I can maybe boost the short-range transmitter enough to reach the next system, but that's about it." Jake nodded and patted her shoulder. Lisa had kept them alive for 6 months with nothing but spare parts and determination. If anyone could get their communications working, it would be her down in the archaeology lab. Dr. Alex Turner was hunched over his computer screens, studying the energy readings from the ruins. The thin scientist had barely left his lab in weeks, and Jake worried about him. But Turner's work might be the key to understanding what this place really was. "Find anything interesting, Alex?" Jake asked as he entered the lab. Turner looked up with excited eyes and pointed at the data flowing across his screens. "The energy patterns are getting stronger, Jake. Whatever these ruins are, they're not completely dead. There's something down there that's still active after all these years." Jake studied the readouts, but the technical data meant nothing to him. "Any idea what it could be?" "Not yet, but I'm getting close. The patterns seem to respond to certain electromagnetic frequencies. It's almost like they're waiting for the right signal to wake up." Security Chief Ben Parker was checking the perimeter sensors when Jake found him in the command center. The big man had been a Marine before joining the research corps, and it showed in everything he did. His weapons were always clean, and his uniform was always pressed despite their isolation. "Anything on the scanners, Ben?" Jake asked. Ben shook his head but kept his eyes on the displays. "Just the usual background radiation and solar interference. This system is as dead as they come, which is probably why they picked it for the outpost." Communications Officer Amy Rodriguez was in the next room working on what remained of their long-range equipment. The young woman had dark hair and quick fingers that seemed to make magic happen with electronic components. "Amy, how's the signal boost coming along?" Jake called out. She looked up from a maze of wires and gave him a tired smile. "I think I've got something, Commander. Give me another hour and I might be able to punch through to the relay station at Proxima." Jake felt a flutter of hope in his chest. News from home would do wonders for crew morale, even if it was just routine updates from Earth. An hour later, Amy's voice echoed through the station intercom. "All hands to the command center. I've got a signal." The crew gathered around the communications console as static filled the speakers. Slowly, Amy tuned the signal until a voice came through clear enough to understand. "This is Proxima Station calling. Any human vessels, Earth is under attack. Repeat, Earth is under attack. The Zephyrian Empire has invaded human space with a massive fleet. All outer colonies are to evacuate immediately. This message will repeat." The words hit the crew like a physical blow. Jake felt his stomach drop as the implications sank in. The Zephyrians were the most powerful alien empire in the galaxy, with technology that made human ships look like children's toys. Dr. Claire Adams, the station medic, was the first to speak. "How is that possible? The Zephyrians were supposed to be peaceful traders." "Apparently not," Ben said grimly. "How long ago was this message sent?" Amy checked her instruments, and her face went pale. 2 weeks, Commander. This signal has been bouncing around the relay network for 2 weeks. Jake felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a heavy coat. His crew was looking to him for answers he didn't have. They were alone on the edge of space with no way home and no way to help in the fight for humanity's survival, sir, Amy said quietly. There's more. The static cleared again and another voice came through. This is Admiral Hayes aboard the UES Constitution. Human forces are in full retreat. The Outer Rim colonies have fallen and the enemy is advancing on the core worlds. All military units are ordered to fall back to the Sol system for final defense. Civilian vessels should evacuate to the galactic south. This may be our last transmission. The message ended and silence filled the command center. Jake looked at each member of his crew and saw fear mixed with determination in their eyes. They were scientists and engineers, not soldiers, but they were. Still human, and Earth was their home, Commander, Ben said, breaking the silence. Long-range sensors are picking up something. Jake moved to the sensor display and felt his blood turn cold. Dozens of massive ships were entering the system, moving in perfect formation toward their planet. The vessels were huge triangular shapes that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, Zephyrian fleet. Ben confirmed, his voice tight with tension. 200 ships at least, including several dreadnoughts. Jake stared at the display as the alien fleet grew larger on the screen. His small crew of 12 people, with their aging weapons and broken equipment, stood between this massive force and whatever secrets lay hidden in the ancient ruins below. What are your orders, sir? Amy asked. Jake took a deep breath and looked at his crew. They could run and maybe escape the system before the aliens noticed them, or they could stay and try to find some way to fight back against impossible odds. The choice should have been easy. But Jake found himself thinking about Earth and all the people who were depending on humanity's defenders. We stay, he said finally. We find out what these aliens are doing here, and we make them pay for what they've done to our people. The alien ships settled into orbit around Kepler 442c like predators circling wounded prey. Jake watched from the command center as hundreds of smaller craft began shuttling between the massive vessels and the planet's surface. The Zephyrians were building something down there, and Jake had a bad feeling about what it might be. They're using our planet as a supply depot, Ben reported from the sensor station. Look at this pattern. They're setting up fuel refineries and equipment caches all across the southern continent. Jake studied the tactical display and felt a chill run down his spine. The alien positions were perfectly placed to support a major offensive operation. They're staging for another attack. This isn't just a random stop. Dr. Turner burst into the command center with his tablet clutched in his hands and his eyes bright with excitement. Jake, you need to see this. The ruins are responding to the alien presence. The energy readings have increased by 300% since they arrived. What does that mean, Alex? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Turner pulled up his latest data and pointed at the screen. The ruins aren't just archaeological sites. They're some kind of defense network built by whoever lived here before. The whole planet is covered with them, and they're all connected underground. Lisa looked up from the engineering console where she had been monitoring the station's power systems. That would explain the unusual mineral deposits we found. This whole planet is wired with some kind of exotic matter conduits. Jake felt a spark of hope for the first time since the aliens arrived. Can we use this network somehow? Turner shook his head, but his expression remained excited. Not yet, but I'm learning more every hour. The technology is incredibly advanced, but it seems to be designed for biological interfaces. Someone was meant to control these systems directly, Amy interrupted from her position at the communications array. Commander, I'm picking up Zephyrian transmissions. They're not encrypted. Jake moved to her station and listened to the alien voices speaking in their harsh clicking language. The translation software was working slowly, but Jake caught enough to understand the basic meaning. They're reporting to someone called Admiral Vextereth, Amy explained. The Admiral is apparently pleased with their progress and expects to begin. The next phase soon? Ben leaned over Jake's shoulder and pointed at the translation display. They're talking about human defensive positions in the core worlds. This isn't just a supply stop, Jake. They're planning the final assault on Earth. Jake felt anger burn in his chest like acid. These aliens had already destroyed dozens of human colonies, and now they were using his planet to plan the death of his species. How long before they're ready to move out? Amy listened to more transmissions, and her face went pale. 72 hours, Commander. They'll be fully supplied and ready to jump to the Sol system in 3 days. The weight of that knowledge settled on Jake's shoulders like a mountain. 3 days to stop an alien fleet that could crush Earth's remaining defenses. 3 days, with 12 people and a handful of outdated weapons. There has to be something we can do, Dr. Adams said from her position near the medical station. We can't just sit here and watch them destroy Earth. Jake looked around at his crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were still human, and humans didn't give up without a fight. Alex, I want you to keep working on those ruins. Find out everything you can about how they work and what they were designed to do. Turner nodded eagerly and headed back toward his lab. I'll need to get closer to the main complex. The readings are strongest there. Take Kevin with you, Jake said, referring to their tech specialist. And be careful. I don't want the aliens to know we're still here. Tech specialist Kevin Walsh had been quiet during the discussion, but now he looked up from his computer terminal. Commander, I've been analyzing the Zephyrian communication protocols. Their security is good, but not perfect. I might be able to hack into their network if I can. Get close enough to one of their installations. Jake nodded approvingly. Kevin was young, but he had a gift for making computers do things they weren't supposed to do. Work with Ben on reconnaissance. I want to know everything about their positions and defenses. Ben was already strapping on his sidearm and checking his equipment. We still have the 2 scout ships in the hangar. They're old, but they're quiet, and the Zephyrians probably won't notice them if we stay low. Lisa stood up from her engineering station and cracked her knuckles. I can modify our mining charges into shaped explosives. They won't be as powerful as military hardware, but they'll make a mess of anything they hit. Jake felt a plan starting to form in his mind. It was crazy and probably suicidal, but it was better than doing nothing. Lisa, I want you to work with Claire on preparing surprises for our alien friends. Amy, keep monitoring their communications. I want to know the instant anything changes. Dr. Adams looked confused. What can I do to help Jake? I'm a medical officer, not a soldier. Jake remembered something from Adams's file and smiled grimly. You did your residency on Titan Colony, didn't you, Claire? You've dealt with alien biology before. Adams nodded slowly as understanding dawned in her eyes. Zephyrian physiology. You want me to find weaknesses? Exactly. Any edge we can get might make the difference. The crew scattered to their assigned tasks, while Jake remained in the command center staring at the tactical display. 200 alien ships hung in space above their heads like a sword waiting to fall. In 3 days, those ships would jump to Earth and finish what they had started. But Jake and his crew had something the aliens didn't expect. They had desperation and determination, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for their species. The Zephyrians thought they had already won, but they were about to learn that humans never surrendered. Turner's voice crackled over the intercom. From his lab. Jake, I think I've found something. The ruins aren't just connected to each other. They're connected to similar sites on other worlds. This is bigger than we thought. Jake felt his pulse quicken. How much bigger, Alex? I'm reading connections to at least 50 other star systems. This network spans half the galaxy, Jake. Whoever built it was preparing for a war on an unimaginable scale. Jake stared out at the alien fleet and felt a cold smile cross his face. The Zephyrians thought they were the masters of the galaxy, but they had chosen the wrong planet for their staging ground. They had awakened something that had been sleeping for thousands of years. Keep working, Alex. I have. A feeling we're going to need every advantage we can get. Turner stood at the edge of the main ruin complex with sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold morning air. The ancient structures seemed to pulse with invisible energy that made his teeth ache and his vision blur at the edges. Kevin crouched beside him, adjusting the portable scanner they had brought from the outpost. "The power readings are off the charts," Kevin whispered as he studied the device display. "Whatever's down there is drawing massive amounts of energy from somewhere." Turner nodded and wiped his palms on his pants. 3 days of studying the ruins had taught him that the structures responded to human presence in ways they never had before. The aliens who built this place had been preparing for something terrible, and Turner was beginning to understand what back at the outpost, Lisa was bent over her workbench, surrounded by mining charges and electronic components. She had spent the last 18 hours converting their excavation explosives into weapons that could punch holes through alien armor. Her hands moved with practiced precision as she wired detonators and shaped the charges for maximum effect. "How many do we have?" Jake asked as he entered the workshop. Lisa looked up from her work and rubbed her tired eyes. 40 shaped charges and enough timer mechanisms for a dozen remote bombs. Not much against a fleet that size, but enough to make them notice us." Ben appeared in the doorway carrying his reconnaissance gear and wearing a grim expression. "Jake, we need to talk. I've been watching the alien patrols and I found something. Interesting?" Jake followed Ben to the command center where tactical displays showed the positions of Zephyrian forces across the planet. Red dots marked enemy installations, while blue lines traced their patrol routes and supply convoys. "They're not random," Ben explained, pointing at the display. "The aliens are following some kind of pattern based on the planet's magnetic field. Every major installation is positioned at points where the field lines converge." Amy looked up from her communications station with surprise in her voice. "That explains why their ships are maintaining those specific orbital positions. They're using the magnetic field to charge some kind of exotic drive system." Jake studied the tactical map and felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. How long do they need to fully charge their ships? Based on the energy readings. "I'm seeing," Amy replied after checking her instruments. "About 60 hours for the smaller vessels and 72 for the dreadnoughts." Turner's voice crackled over the intercom from his position at the ruins. "Jake, I need you down here immediately. I've made contact with the defense network and you're not going to believe what I found." Jake grabbed his equipment and headed for the exit while Ben gathered a security team. The ancient ruins were only a 20-minute walk from the outpost, but Jake felt exposed under the alien ships that hung in the sky like metal storm clouds. When they reached the main complex, Turner was standing inside a chamber carved from solid rock with his hands pressed against a panel covered in glowing symbols. The archaeologist's eyes were closed, and his body was trembling with effort. "Alex, what are you doing?" Jake called out as he entered the chamber. Turner opened his eyes, and Jake saw they were glowing with the same light as the symbols. "The network is alive, Jake. It's been waiting for someone to activate it for thousands of years. The previous inhabitants called themselves the Architects, and they built this system to defend against invasion." Kevin was frantically taking readings with his scanner while Ben kept watch at the chamber entrance. "The power levels are incredible," Kevin reported. "This thing is tapping into the planet's core somehow." Turner pressed his palms harder against the control panel, and his voice took on a strange, echoing quality. "The Architects faced an enemy that consumed entire star systems. They built this network as their final weapon, but they died before they could use it. The system has been dormant ever since." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air in the chamber. "What kind of weapon, Alex?" "A quantum disruption field that can disable any technology within 50 light years. It propagates through hyperspace using the galactic magnetic field as a carrier wave. One activation point can cascade to hundreds of others." Ben lowered his rifle and stared at the glowing panel. "You're talking about shutting down every Zephyrian ship in this sector." Turner nodded, but his expression was troubled. The system requires a living consciousness to direct the field. The architects designed it to be operated by their own neural patterns, but human brainwaves are close enough to work. Jake heard the unspoken warning in Turner's voice. What's the cost, Alex? The quantum feedback will kill whoever operates the system. The architects knew it was a suicide weapon when they built it. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of the ancient machinery. Jake looked around at his small team and felt the weight of an impossible decision settling on his shoulders. They had found a way to stop the alien fleet, but using it would mean sacrificing one of his people. There has to be another way, Jake said. Finally, Turner shook, his head sadly. I've been interfacing with the network for hours. This is how it was designed. One life to save billions. Amy's voice came through their comm units with barely controlled excitement. All teams return to base immediately. We're getting signals. From other human groups, Jake ordered everyone back to the outpost, where Amy was hunched over her communications array with tears streaming down her face. I've made contact with resistance cells on 4 other worlds. There are still humans fighting. Out there, Jake. The main screen displayed a map showing the locations of the other groups. A team of stranded Marines on a mining colony, scientists hiding in ruins similar to their own, engineers trapped on a research station. Each group was alone and outnumbered, but none of them had given up. Can we coordinate with them? Jake asked Amy. Nodded eagerly. The quantum entanglement system Turner activated has created a communication network between all the architect sites. We can talk to each other instantly across any distance. Jake stared at the map and felt a plan forming in his mind. If each site could activate its own portion of the network, they might be able to create a cascade effect that would reach across the entire galaxy, but it would require perfect timing and the sacrifice of at least 5 people. Get me a direct line to all the other groups, Jake ordered. We're going to coordinate the largest human military operation in history. Claire Adams entered the command center carrying a sealed container and wearing a protective suit. Jake, I've finished analyzing Zephyrian biological samples. I've created something that should help even the odds. Jake looked at the container with suspicion. What kind of something, Claire? An engineered virus that targets their respiratory system. It's harmless to humans, but fatal to Zephyrians. I can introduce it into their water recycling systems. Ben was already strapping on his gear and checking his weapons. Give me a target list, and I'll make sure every alien base on this planet gets a taste of human hospitality. Jake looked around at his crew and felt pride swell in his chest. 12 people against an empire, and they were still fighting. The aliens thought they had already won, but they were about to learn that humanity never knew when to quit. All right, people, Jake said as alarms began sounding from the sensor station. It looks like our guests are getting curious about us. Time to show them what happens when you mess with Earth. The Zephyrian patrol ships swept across the landscape like metal vultures hunting for prey. Jake watched them through the perimeter sensors while his crew prepared for what might be their last stand. The aliens had finally noticed that something was wrong on their staging planet, and they were searching for the source of their problems. 3 ships heading this way, Ben reported from the sensor station. They'll be here in 15 minutes. Turner was still connected to the architect network in the ruins below the outpost. His body lay motionless on a medical bed while his mind navigated the ancient systems. Dr. Adams monitored his vital signs, with growing concern as his neural activity spiked beyond safe levels. His brain is processing information faster than any human should be able to handle, Adams reported. If he stays connected much longer, the feedback could kill him. Jake knelt beside Turner's bed and spoke quietly. Alex, can you hear me? We need to know if the network is ready. Turner's eyes opened, but they glowed with the same blue light as the architect symbols. When he spoke, his voice had a strange harmonic quality that made Jake's skin crawl. The network spans 237 worlds, Jake. Most of the sites are dormant, but 43 still have active power cores. Can we coordinate with all of them? The other human groups are in position at 4 sites. If we can synchronize our activation sequences, the cascade will propagate across the entire network. Every Zephyrian ship within 1,000 light years will lose power simultaneously. Amy looked up from her communications array with excitement in her voice. I've got confirmation from all 4 sites. The Marines on Kepler 438b are ready despite being under siege. The scientists on Proxima Station have cleared out the Zephyrian infiltrators. The engineers on Deep Space Station 7 have jury-rigged their power systems to handle the load. Jake felt hope and terror warring in his chest. They had a chance to strike a blow that would cripple the Zephyrian Empire, but the cost would be enormous. 5 people would have to die to make it work, and he would have to choose who lived and who died, Commander, Kevin called out from his computer station. I've successfully hacked into the Zephyrian communication network. Their security protocols are good, but they weren't designed to handle human creativity. Jake moved to Kevin's station and looked at the data streaming across the screens. Alien tactical information flowed past faster than he could read, but certain patterns were becoming clear. What am I looking at? Kevin pointed at a series of status reports from Zephyrian ships throughout the sector. Fleet deployment schedules, Jake. They're not just staging here for an attack on Earth. They're coordinating a simultaneous assault on every remaining human colony in the galaxy. The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. This wasn't just about Earth anymore. The Zephyrians were planning to wipe out humanity completely within the next 48 hours. Every human settlement from the core worlds to the outer rim would be destroyed in a coordinated extermination campaign. How many ships are involved? Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. Kevin's fingers flew across his keyboard as he pulled up more data. Over 10,000 vessels, Jake. Battle groups positioned at every human world simultaneously. They're calling it Operation Final Solution. Ben cursed quietly and checked his weapons for the 3rd time. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for the survival of our entire species. Lisa wiped grease from her hands and looked up from the explosive charges she had been preparing. Then we better make this count. How much time do we have? Amy monitored the alien communications while coordinating with the other human sites. 36 hours before they begin the final assault. The fleet here will jump to Earth in 30 hours, with the others following 6 hours later. Turner's body convulsed on the medical bed as massive amounts of information flowed through the architect network into his brain. Adams quickly administered a neural stabilizer, but her expression remained worried. He can't take much more of this. His neural pathways are burning out from the overload. Jake made his decision with the cold certainty that came from having no other choice. Alex, disconnect from the network. We need you alive for the final activation. Turner's glowing eyes focused on Jake with an effort that was painful to watch. I can stay connected for maybe 6 more hours. After that, the damage will be irreversible. We need to time this perfectly. The sound of approaching engines filled the outpost as the Zephyrian patrol ships drew closer. Jake could see their angular shapes through the main window as they swept back and forth across the terrain like hunting hounds following a scent. They're scanning for energy signatures, Ben reported. So far, the architect's shielding is holding, but if they get much closer, they'll detect us. Jake activated the station intercom and spoke to his entire crew. All hands, this is the commander. In 30 hours, the Zephyrian Empire will begin the complete extermination of humanity. We have the power to stop them, but it will require the ultimate sacrifice from some of us. He paused to let the words sink in before continuing. I won't order anyone to die. This has to be a volunteer mission. Anyone who wants to take one of the scout ships and try to escape the system can do so with my blessing. The response was immediate and unanimous. Every member of his crew reported to the command center within minutes, and not one of them looked like they were planning to run. Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion as he looked at their determined faces. We're with you, Commander, Amy said, speaking for all of them. Humanity doesn't abandon its own, and we're not starting now. Dr. Adams stepped forward carrying the container of engineered virus she had created. I've modified the pathogen to be airborne. One canister released into their ventilation system should infect an entire installation within hours. Ben took the container and secured it in his equipment pack. I can infiltrate their main command post tonight while they're distracted by the patrol search. If we're going to hit them, we need to take out their leadership first. Lisa held up a remote detonator connected to the explosives she had prepared. I've placed shaped charges at every major power junction in their base. When we activate the network, the explosions will prevent them from restoring their systems. Jake looked around at his crew and felt pride and sorrow mixing in his heart. These 12 people were about to attempt something that would be remembered for as long as humanity survived. They were going to face an empire that had conquered half the galaxy, and they were going to win or die trying. Kevin, I want you to upload a virus into their computer systems the moment the network activates. If we can corrupt their navigation data, it will take them days to reorganize. Kevin nodded and patted the portable computer he had prepared. I've created a worm that will propagate through their quantum communication links. It will corrupt every database they have. Turner opened his eyes and spoke with obvious effort. Jake, the other sites are reporting ready status. The Marines on Kepler 438b are down to their last ammunition, but they're holding position. Everyone else is in place and waiting for our signal. Jake took a deep breath and looked out at the alien ships that filled the sky above their small outpost. Somewhere out there, Admiral Vex Tareth was planning the final destruction of humanity. But the Admiral was about to learn that humans had their own plans. Synchronize chronometers, people. We activate in exactly 29 hours and 36 minutes. Let's show these aliens why you never corner a human. 24 hours remained until the Zephyrian fleet would jump to Earth and begin the final extermination of humanity. Jake stood in the command center watching status updates from the 4 other Architect sites while his crew made final preparations. For their desperate gamble, Turner lay connected to the ancient network with his life signs growing weaker by the hour. The quantum feedback was slowly burning out his neural pathways, but he refused to disconnect until the activation sequence was complete. Dr. Adams monitored his condition with growing alarm. His brain activity is beyond anything I've ever seen, Adams reported quietly. He's processing information at a rate that should be impossible for human consciousness. The network is using him like a biological computer. Jake knelt beside Turner's bed and spoke softly. Alex, can you still hear me? Turner's glowing eyes focused on Jake with obvious effort. The network is ready, Jake. All 43 active sites are synchronized and waiting for the activation command. But there's something else you need to know. What is it, Alex? Turner's voice was barely above a whisper. The architects didn't just build this network to defend their own worlds. They built it to defend all organic life in the galaxy. The enemy they fought wasn't just another empire, Jake. It was something that consumed entire star systems and converted them into raw materials. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying the Zephyrians aren't the first species to try galactic conquest? The network contains records of dozens of aggressive civilizations that rose and fell over millions of years. Each one thought they were destined to rule the galaxy. Until they encountered something that put them in perspective, Amy interrupted from her communication station with urgent news. Commander, I'm getting reports from the other sites. The Marines on Kepler 438b are under heavy assault. They don't think they can hold their position much longer. Jake moved to Amy's station and listened to the crackling transmission from the besieged Marine unit. Sergeant Martinez and his remaining men were holed up in the Architect complex while Zephyrian forces bombarded their position with plasma artillery. This is Outpost Delta 7. Jake spoke into the transmitter. How many men do you have left, Sergeant? The reply came back filled with static and the sound of explosions. 4 Marines, still combat effective, Commander. We've taken heavy casualties, but we're holding the activation chamber. These alien bastards aren't getting past us. Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. Those Marines were going to die defending a chamber that only one of them could operate. They knew the mission required their sacrifice, and they were facing it with the courage that defined humanity. Sergeant, you need to designate someone to interface with the network. The activation requires direct neural contact. There was a pause before Martinez replied. Corporal Johnson volunteers, sir. The kid's got the steadiest hands, and he's not afraid of fancy alien technology. Ben appeared at Jake's shoulder, carrying his infiltration gear and wearing camouflage paint on his face. Jake, I'm ready to hit their command post. The virus Claire, created, should start working within hours of release. Jake nodded and gripped Ben's shoulder. Be careful out there. We need you back in one piece for the final activation. Ben smiled grimly and checked his weapons one last time. Don't worry about me, Commander. I've got a date with some aliens who need to learn about human hospitality. Lisa was in the workshop making final adjustments to the explosive charges while Kevin uploaded his computer virus into a portable transmission unit. Both of them worked with the focused intensity of people who knew they might not live to see another day. The charges are set to detonate in sequence, Lisa reported. First the power grid, then the communication arrays, then the fuel storage. Tanks. By the time we're done, they won't have anything left but scrap metal. Kevin looked up from his computer with satisfaction. The virus is ready to deploy. Once it enters their network, it will corrupt every system they have. Navigation, star charts, tactical databases, even their personal communication logs. Turner's body convulsed as another surge of information flowed through the Architect network. Adams quickly administered another neural stabilizer, but her expression remained grim. He's dying, Jake. The network is burning out his brain one synapse at a time. Jake felt anger and desperation warring in his chest. Turner was sacrificing himself to save humanity, but watching his friend die slowly was almost unbearable. How much longer can he hold on? Maybe 6 hours, Adams replied. After that, the damage will be irreversible even if we disconnect him. Amy received another transmission from the besieged Marines, and her face went pale. Commander Kepler 438b is reporting Zephyrian forces have breached their outer defenses. Sergeant Martinez says they have maybe 30 minutes before the aliens reach the activation chamber. Jake made a command decision that felt like signing death warrants. Tell Martinez to begin his activation sequence now. We'll synchronize the other sites to match his timing. Turner's glowing eyes suddenly focused with crystal clarity. Jake, the network is showing me something. The Zephyrian fleet positions have changed. They're not just staging for an attack on human worlds. What do you mean, Alex? They're positioning their forces around every major star in this sector. Not just inhabited systems, but empty ones, too. I think they're planning to do something. To the stars themselves. Amy frantically checked her communications array, and her face went white with terror. Commander, I'm detecting massive energy buildups in the cores of 17 different stars. The Zephyrians have deployed some kind of stellar manipulation devices. Jake stared at the tactical display as the horrible truth became clear. The aliens weren't just planning to destroy human civilization. They were going to destroy the stars that powered entire regions of space. Billions of worlds would be consumed in artificial supernovas. How long before they activate the stellar devices? Jake asked. Amy's hands shook as she calculated the energy readings. 4 hours, Commander. In 4 hours, they'll trigger a cascade of supernova explosions that will sterilize this entire arm of the galaxy. Turner's voice echoed through the command center with the authority of the ancient network itself. The architects faced this same threat, Jake. An enemy that didn't just conquer worlds but destroyed entire star systems to prevent anyone else from using them. The network was built to stop that kind of ultimate evil. Jake looked around at his crew and saw the same realization in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They weren't just fighting for humanity anymore. They were fighting for every living thing in dozens of star systems. The stakes had just become unimaginably high. All sites prepare for immediate activation, Jake commanded. We're not waiting for the original timeline. The network goes active in 1 hour. Ben's voice crackled over, the comm from his position near the alien command post. Jake, I'm in position and ready to deploy the virus. Just give me the word. Jake took a deep breath and felt the weight of billions of lives settling on his shoulders. In 1 hour, his crew would either save the galaxy or die trying. There was no middle ground and no second chances. This is Commander Morrison to all Architect sites. Execute operation in 60 minutes. For humanity and for every living thing in the galaxy. The countdown reached 0, and Turner pressed his consciousness fully into the Architect network with the knowledge that he would never return. Jake watched his friend's body convulse one final time before going completely still. The neural feedback. Monitors flatlined, but the ancient systems around them erupted with blinding light. Across the galaxy, 4 other humans made the same sacrifice. Corporal Johnson on Kepler 438b, Dr. Sarah Kim on Proxima Station, Engineer Robert Chen on Deep Space 7, Lieutenant Maria Santos on the research outpost at Wolf 359. 5 people gave their lives to activate a weapon system that had waited 10,000 years for this moment. The quantum disruption field exploded, outward from each activation point at faster than light speed. It propagated through hyperspace, using the galactic magnetic field as a carrier wave, just as the architects had designed. Within minutes, the field reached every star system within. 1,000 light-year radius above Kepler 442c, the mighty Zephyrian fleet suddenly went dark. 200 massive warships lost power simultaneously and began falling toward the planet's surface like metal rain. Their anti-grav systems failed, their life support shut down, and their weapons went silent. The aliens who had conquered half. The galaxy found themselves helpless and drifting. Jake watched through the command center viewports as alien dreadnoughts crashed into the planet's surface in spectacular explosions that lit up the horizon. The ships that had seemed so invincible just minutes before were now nothing but burning wreckage scattered across the landscape. It worked, Amy whispered in amazement as her communication systems came back online. Jake, it actually worked. I'm getting reports from human colonies throughout the sector. Every Zephyrian ship in space has lost power. Ben's voice crackled over the comm from his position in the alien command post. The virus is working too. Their entire computer network is corrupted beyond repair. Even if they get power back, they won't know where they are or how to get home. Lisa activated the explosive charges she had placed throughout the Zephyrian base, and the ground shook with a series of massive detonations. Fuel depots erupted in pillars of flame, while communication towers collapsed in twisted heaps of metal. The alien staging area was completely destroyed. But Jake felt no joy in their victory. Turner lay dead on the medical bed, and 4 other heroes had made the same sacrifice across the galaxy. The price of saving billions of lives had been paid by 5 people who would never be forgotten. Dr. Adams checked Turner's vital signs one final time and shook her head sadly. He's gone, Jake. The network burned out his entire nervous system, but he held on long enough to complete the activation. Jake knelt beside his friend's body and closed the archaeologist's eyes. Turner had unlocked the secrets of an ancient civilization and used that knowledge to save every living thing in dozens of star systems. There could be no greater legacy than that Amy's communication systems were now receiving transmissions from across human space. Commander, I'm getting reports from Earth. The Zephyrian fleet that was attacking the Sol system has gone dead in space. Human forces are moving to capture the disabled ships. More reports flooded in from colony worlds that had been under siege just hours before. On New Moscow, the alien occupation force was surrendering after their equipment failed. On Titan Station, the Zephyrian blockade fleet was drifting helplessly, while human patrol ships moved in to take prisoners. Kevin looked up from his computer terminal with amazement in his voice. Jake, the disruption field didn't just affect ships in space. It hit every piece of Zephyrian technology in the galaxy simultaneously. Their homeworlds have lost power, their communication networks are down, and their entire civilization has basically collapsed overnight. Jake absorbed the magnitude of what they had accomplished. The Zephyrian Empire that had seemed unstoppable just days before was now crippled and helpless. Their invasion fleets were destroyed, their homeworlds were in chaos, and their dreams of galactic conquest had ended in complete failure. But the most important news came from Amy's analysis of the stellar manipulation devices. The disruption field destroyed their Starkiller weapons too, Jake. 17 different stars were minutes away from going supernova, but the devices shut down before they could activate. Jake felt the weight of billions of saved lives settling on his shoulders. They had prevented not just the destruction of human civilization, but the death of entire star systems. Countless worlds that would have been consumed in artificial supernovas were now safe. Ben returned to the outpost covered in alien blood and carrying a Zephyrian officer's ceremonial sword. "I brought you a souvenir, Commander. Admiral Vexatareth won't be needing it anymore." Jake took the curved blade and examined its alien craftsmanship. The weapon was beautiful and deadly, just like the empire that had created it. But empires built on conquest and genocide always fell eventually, and the Zephyrians had just learned that lesson the hard way. "What's our status?" Jake asked. His surviving crew Lisa wiped grease from her hands and smiled for the first time in days. "All systems operational and the Architect network is still active. We've got defensive capabilities that make us practically invulnerable." Amy monitored communications from across the galaxy, and her expression grew more amazed by the hour. "Jake, I'm receiving surrender offers from Zephyrian commanders on dozens of worlds. They're offering to submit to human authority in exchange for assistance restoring their basic life support systems." Kevin had accessed the aliens' military databases and was studying their strategic information. Their entire command structure has collapsed. Without their communication networks, they can't coordinate any kind of resistance. The Empire is finished. Dr. Adams was preparing Turner's body for burial, while tears streamed down her face. "He saved everyone, Jake. Alex saved every living thing in this part of the galaxy, and he knew he was going to die doing it." Jake looked around at his crew and felt pride and sorrow mixing in his heart. They had started as 12 scientists and researchers on a routine mission. They had become the heroes who saved galactic civilization from extinction. But the cost had been higher than anyone should have to pay. "We'll build a monument here," Jake decided, "for Alex and for the other 4, who gave their lives today. Future generations need to remember what they did." Amy received one final transmission that made her smile through her tears. "Commander, I'm getting a message from Earth. President Harrison is declaring today Human Liberation Day. It's going to be a permanent holiday to commemorate our victory over the Empire." Jake walked to the main viewport and looked out at the burning wreckage of the alien fleet. The Zephyrians had thought they were the masters of the galaxy, but they had underestimated the most dangerous thing in the universe, a human being with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The war was over, and humanity had won. But more importantly, every species in the galaxy was now free to pursue their own destiny without fear of conquest or extermination. The Architect network would remain active to guard against future threats and ensure that no empire could ever again threaten galactic civilization. Jake thought about Turner and the other heroes who had made the ultimate sacrifice. They would be remembered for as long as intelligent life existed in the galaxy. 5 people had stood against an empire and won. That was the human way. "Set course for Earth," Jake ordered. "It's time to go home."